Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Warriors of Love Dynasty, al tercer capítulo de nuestro podcast. Hoy tenemos con nosotros a Nadine Lee, una mujer australiana que es la creadora de Tantric Alchemy. Desde muy joven, Nadine estuvo muy conectada a su energía espiritual y hoy por hoy su misión y pasión es ayudar al despertar de conciencia en este planeta a través de la unión del divino masculino y del divino femenino en cada hombre y mujer. Ayuda a las mujeres a reconectar verdaderamente con el gozo y placer de vivir en sus cuerpos libres de juicios y condicionamientos, y ayuda a los hombres a despertar todo su potencial erótico para ofrecer los mejores dones a su pareja y vivir las relaciones más saludables posibles. En sus cursos y talleres, Nadine, a través del Tantra Yoga, te ayuda a sumergirte en las profundidades de la experiencia humana y a que descubras y vivas todo tu potencial. Esperamos que sinceramente lo disfrutéis muchísimo.
Great. So welcome today with us, Nadine. It's a pleasure to have you here with our second interview in the Warriors of Love Dynasty podcast. And we have you here to speak about, well, you're a woman's mentor, if I define it correctly. And we're here to speak about and get some more insight about where women are and what's the work they're facing right now in this 21st century, especially what inner work and what inner obstacles their experience, and for them to relate with, and also for us men to understand it better and be able to relate better to women. So I'm here again with Dani, and if you had to define your work, how would you define it? How would you define yourself, your work, and your purpose and your mission?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, defining myself. Something you can't really define, but I would say, I'm here just to really evolve consciousness and grow. And so my mission is really just staying committed to that. And then everything that I'm sharing in terms of my work is just an extension of that. So everything that I'm kind of learning along the way and alchemizing and revealing, that is kind of what I'm here to then help others step into. So at the moment, it's really taken a focus in, at this point in time, a lot of my work is really around supporting women mainly come into inner union with their healing, their inner masculine and inner feminine in harmony together. So healing their childhood wounds, father wound, mother wounds, and then really showing up in a wholesome place within themselves. So merging the feminine principles, awakening those feminine principles of like the sexuality of their emotional body and their creativity, also with their connection to intellect and logic and structure and discipline in their business. So it's kind of like, I feel a big focus is business and sexuality is a big part of my work at the moment. That's really what's taken a niche, and it's really through those expressions merging the inner masculine and inner feminine within women. Yeah.
Would you say there's something that you see that in your work and working with your clients, there's like in that process of integrating these energies in the experience of a woman, what would you say are maybe like the main obstacles there?
Well, because we live in such a society that it is dominated by the masculine principle, most women are really still either in an unhealthy expression of that, or like as in it's excessive, or it's just completely collapsed. And so there's like not really much of a space for their feminine to actually feel safe to express, because they either got this like inner turmoil with this immature masculine energy within them, or this like dominant masculine energy within them, that it's creating no safety or space for their true feminine energy to blossom, you know. And so there's a bit of this, it's not just in women, it's in men as well. The feminine principle has been so suppressed for so many years, and it's really about how do we like not suppress the masculine at the expense of the feminine, but like how do we bring that masculine energy into a healthy expression, so then the feminine can also rise in a healthy expression within all of us. But within women, obviously we're more feminine dominant because that's what makes us a woman. It's like, yeah, that's another element, because there's this element of not feeling, I think, safe in the body, in their sexuality, in their expression. So this is really the biggest, I think, obstacle that a lot of women are facing. And then, you know, and then they, you know, find that balance of their inner masculine, feminine, and then it's almost like there's a feeling of where does that leave a man to show up for them, because it's almost like they can create, you know, their own money now, just, you know, buy their own home, all these things. So a lot of women are like finding this inner union and not finding men that can meet them in that inner union as well. So the men are needing to do this work also, so we can all kind of play together, you know. Yeah, so that's the biggest concerns, I feel.
It's very interesting, because I feel like on the side of men, on our side, we also have like these men that are, or maybe or extremely in their masculine, in their masculine, like coming from patriarchy and not integrated and not connected with their emotion or their feminine side at all. And that's a work that has to be done. But at the same time, there's also the other extreme, where maybe men have gone too much into their feminine and now they need to reintegrate and realign with their masculine energy. And I kind of feel that in women, it's more or less happening the same, right? There's right now in the 21st century, with all this progress, women have also gone, a lot of women have also gone extremely to their masculine, with it, which is amazing, because it gives them the opportunity to integrate that energy. But there's also been also a loss in their connection to the feminine, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, you see that a lot. It's like, I just wrote about this today, you know, the Animus Possession, which is, the animus is that inner masculine of a woman, of her psyche, and it's like it possesses her, so then she becomes like really hyper masculine. And the same is happening with a lot of men, especially when men go down the spiritual path. You know, they find that connection to their feminine, and then it kind of takes over them, and then they just turn like completely feminine, and then suppress their inner masculine. And you know, I think like it's just how everything works, like in nature, polarities. You know, maybe if you've been living, if a hypermasculine man has been living in his alpha, like really dominant masculine energy his whole life, then he might go the full other spectrum and go really feminine. But eventually it'll have to balance out. And it's the same with women. Like, you know, they might spend a phase in their full on masculine energy, but then they're going to have to eventually balance it out, because that's just, you know, nature's always trying to balance out into that middle point. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's just a part of the integration process, potentially, is like going to the full extreme, you know, from men going into their feminine, women going into their masculine, and then coming into a balancing, hopefully, eventually.
Yeah, it's a very confusing process. But at the same time, if you look at like from the bigger perspective, in a global in a global way, it's very inspiring. Like in history, how we've been evolving, and now in the process we are right now, where we start to become complete human beings by integrating both of our energies and not being divided, and needing also just a partner or a woman or a man to feel complete, right?
Yeah, it's actually pretty wild how, it's only really been like, you think of the 1940s, the traditional, the housewife at home just there to cook meals for the man and make babies and clean the house, and the man's just out working. And now within 50 or 60 years, it's like women are completely working for themselves, doing all these things. So it's pretty radical how it shifted so quickly. But I think also there can be a mistake in that, where it's like the women also, in this pursuit of freedom and liberation, it's almost like actually disconnecting them from the feminine principles, because they're taking it too extreme. And then they're like I said, it's like, well, I don't need a man anymore, but yet they still want a man. But they're kind of not giving any space for a man, because their inner masculine is just taking over and running the show. So it's like, how do we as men stay men and women stay women, but also have the integration of those two polarities within as well? So we're not coming from a codependent place, but more interdependent, man and woman can be together, but actually working in a interdependent way, not codependent, where it's you can't even you can't live without that person. That's not healthy. That's
So how would you, for our audience, how would you define them, the masculine and feminine principles, so that they can have an idea for those that have never been in touch with those terms?
So if you look at I guess in nature, it shows us a lot. For example, a river, there's the water flowing down the river, and then there's on the side of the riverbed all the rocks and boulders holding the kind of river in place. So you'd see that's a metaphor for, masculine would be the rocks, the water would be the feminine, flowing, but then the masculine is containing it. So in nature you can see it everywhere around us. But then within us, it's those same things. Masculine energy is that sense of structure, groundedness, protection, direction, containment in a healthy way. And then the feminines, the flow and the intuition and the emotional body and the eros, the sexuality and that embodiment of love, and so we all have those two qualities within us. But women, we have more of the feminine usually, because of the way our bodies are designed. We have a womb, we have different hormonal structures, and then men have their structure, their hormones. And you can even see it in our hormones that we are actually more in that feminine masculine principle. Men's hormones stay the same kind of flat line throughout the month, so they're more in a stable, you're more like a stable flat line, like the sun. The sun always comes out every day, and then the feminine, our hormones are actually like a bell curve. They're not a flat line. It goes from the starts low, then it peaks around our ovulation, and then it tailors off, like the phases of the moon. It's a fluctuation. We're cyclical as women. Men are more linear, just in the way of how we are biologically and psychologically. So those two balance each other out, they really do. And we actually do we complement each other. That's why God created man and woman, not just all one sex.
That's a very good metaphor. I've never heard of it, like being the masculine the sun and the feminine the moon, That's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Danny wants to ask something. Danny?
Yes, yes, es muy, muy interesante todo lo que está comentando Nadine. Yo quería preguntarle porque, lógicamente, todo este proceso para llegar a lo a su trabajo ahora es el proceso de una vida, ¿no? Pero sí que me gustaría que nos pudiera decir algún momento en el camino, en su proceso, que realmente fue el que le marcó, para darse cuenta de que su misión y que su propósito era este trabajo tan bello, ¿no? Y también tan retador, tan diferente a lo que es la sociedad, el ayudar a mujeres a encontrar su propia esencia femenina, su placer, y también sé que ayuda a hombres. Entonces sí me gustaría saber, he visto que como yo también tiene trabajo con las líneas del Tantra, Shivaita, Cachemir, pero que nos pudiera decir algún momento de su vida en el que se dio cuenta de que este era su camino, de que este era la manera que tenía de servir sus dones al mundo.
Yes, that would be a very insightful question. Danny's saying that it would be amazing if you want to share with us a moment in your life where, like, what has been your life story and what took you to actually realize that this was the work you wanted to be doing, and what shifted you into taking this path and doing this work.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was 14, yeah, I had you could say it was like a Kundalini awakening, and it really shifted my consciousness really radically, at such a young age. It was almost like I taken ayahuasca or done some intense plant medicine ceremony, and nothing was the same after this experience that I had. And my whole perception of reality was like completely changed. And I didn't know how to really deal with this at the time. So how it kind of manifested was it kind of sent me into depression, into paranoia, into eating disorders, and just really a lot of mental turmoil and emotional turmoil. And then when I was 18, 18 actually, yeah, 18, 19, I was like, I knew something was not right, within me. And I went down the traditional path of going to psychiatrists and getting medication, and it just made me it was really bad. And so I only lasted in that kind of realm for maybe 6 months. And I was like, this is horrible. This medication makes me feel like a zombie and just completely disconnected from myself. And then just like a gift from, God, or whatever you want to call it, came, and I found yoga and meditation. And I remember being in this meditation class and just really feeling for the first time, like, wow, like this sense of connected back to myself and center, and fully connected back into my body. And and so I was like, okay, there's something in this. So I started, going back to the classes and doing the yoga. And then shortly after that, I just I just decided I wanted to kind of pursue this path. I was working in corporate at the time, in marketing and advertising. And I was like, this is just like soul destroying work, and it's not in alignment with my soul and what I'm here to birth, because I was getting more and more in touch with myself. And so I started studying nutrition, and that was kind of like the gateway in. And then like healing some of my eating disorder things and everything, and through the nutrition studies. And then I was coaching a lot of women with eating disorders, and really what kept coming up for my clients and myself, as I was also kind of going through this healing process, was that there was a deep connection with sexual trauma and eating disorders and depression. And I feel, you know, the root of what happened when I was 14, like it was actually triggered by, some sexual trauma. And I started really going deep into that, into healing my sexuality. And that took me into Tantra. And I met lots of teachers. I became like, it was just like this really powerful time, like in my early 20s, up until about 25, where I was just, teachers were coming into my field and I was like living with them, traveling with them. Like it was like the teachers were just coming to me. I wasn't even seeking any teachings out, you know, and I had no real intention to teach this stuff. I was just like, I just want to focus on this because it's what I need to do to heal myself. And then I actually was really resistant. I remember I was working with a lot of these teachers also in catering their retreats, because I was a nutritionist and I would also do some catering, making the food for their retreats. And I remember saying like, oh, I'm never going to do this work, you know, I'll just keep doing the food. This is what I want to do. And then like life just kept kind of presenting these opportunities for me. And I went to India around 26 to a tantric ashram and lived there for a while. And it was through that that was a big turning point where I realized, you know, I'm here to actually teach this work. And I learned a lot in the ashram, but I actually learned a lot more through my body. And my body was teaching me all these things around feminine embodiment and connecting to the womb and your menstrual cycle and how that can heal your sexuality. And it was actually really profound. You know, it's kind of like that irony, like you go to an ashram to learn all these things and then, you know, the teachings are actually just in your body. Or, you know, even I was learning a lot from just living with the villagers. I actually moved out of the ashram and was living with like the Indian community and was learning more about Tantra through that experience than, you know, the actual ashram teachings, which is kind of, you know, funny. But and then I came back to Australia, and that's when I really started Tantric Alchemy, which is my brand now. I got the vision for Tantric Alchemy in a meditation in the ashram one day, and the logo came in a meditation, and I just started out teaching. It was really just focusing on helping women connect to their menstrual cycle and their womb to help heal their sexual trauma and really reconnect to their bodies. And also, just going deep into exploring different archetypes of the feminines. That was really how I started this work. And then it kind of just kept unfolding over the years.
That's a very, very interesting life story, and I totally relate in a lot of aspects. I want to go into sexuality and sexual work and sexual trauma, but I want to first go a little bit into that experience you had when you were 14, because I kind of related a lot there. I had personally my biggest, when I started having like biggest spiritual breakthrough and spiritual awakening was when I was 20 years old. And it was also a very confusing experience. Like maybe you can, like normally when you hear about all these awakenings, it kind of, you hear it like a very blissful experience. But for me, it was a very confusing experience that nearly drives me crazy because I didn't know how to make sense of it. I thought I was going nuts. And as same as you, just mentors and, you know, and mentors starting to appear, and, you know, whatever I needed to continue evolving and making sense of it, of my spiritual experiences, just started to appear. And I ended up also in a Buddhist center living for 2 years, and that's where I started to really understand better what was going on, more about the experience of living in community than with people that were embodying those practices and the messages of the Buddha more than the teachings itself, right? So I'm interested there. What do you think? How would you define for our listeners, for the ones that maybe say, okay, but what is like that kind of spiritual awakening that was so meaningful for you at 14 years old? What's that experience, or what's that shift that happens there? What's that spiritual awakening?
Yeah, like, I mean, for me, it was actually just really spontaneous. You know, I was just kind of remember what I was doing, but I just remember feeling like energy rushing through my body. And then I just kind of went into this. The only way I can really explain it is when you get high, like smoke marijuana. It felt like I was, getting high, and I hadn't taken any drugs or anything, you know, so it wasn't any stimulants or even any food, I don't think, at all. And I just stayed in that state for like 3 days. And it was like it was the most frightening 3 days of my life. Like, all I really remember, and it's interesting you say, like, it feels like you're going crazy, because it actually felt like that. I was, you know how they say, like, oh, you're losing your mind when you're going crazy? Like, my mind wasn't there. Like, it was just like, there was no thoughts really going through my brain. And it was really scary, because I'm like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, there's nothing in here. Like, what is going on? And all I remember was just having these intense terror feelings before I would go to sleep. And I thought I was going to die before I would go to sleep. And I think, you know, now I see back, like, it could have been, you know, the ego death, not like literally dying. But, you know, at the time, it's just like, as a 14-year-old, you're just like, what the hell is going on? And then, so yeah, I kind of just was in that space. I was staying with my grandma, I think, at the time, for those few days, grandma and grandpa, and then kind of settled back and came back into thinking, rational mind. Like, it was like I was coming off a drug or something, back into this kind of, you know, realm. And then after that, it was just like, it was like literally like I'd done like an intense dose of ayahuasca or something, because I was questioning everything, like, to the extreme. So I was asking questions. I remember sitting with my parents, asking them, like, who am I? Like, what is this life? Like, what is the point of all of this? And it was like, not just like the general curiosity questions. It was like, no, seriously, like, I need to know, like, who am I? Like, what is this reality? What is real? Like, I didn't know what was real. So it was just like very frightening, you know? And the way I kind of really coped with it was like, I just started channeling all the energy into my mind and into, because I didn't want to stop thinking again. So I started like going really into my schoolwork and into like logic, and that kind of, in a way, like, saved me through that period, not completely losing it, because I had a focus point. So, you know, it was kind of good. It benefited my schoolwork, but at the same time, I was really not okay. But I managed to kind of like seem normal for those years, although I felt like I was literally insane for like the whole time. And having a lot of delusional thoughts and paranoia and spouts of depression. It was, it was a very interesting phase. And then, you know, the meditation just kind of balanced it out. And that's when I started to kind of, what I see is, I think the energy, this Kundalini energy, just blasted through my body and had the awakening in the upper chakras. You know, the mind just blasted open. But then when I found the yoga and meditation, it was almost like the energy started to come back down and come back into my body, into the lower chakras. So I was back in my body fully, and not just up in these upper chakras, you know, and into the mental sphere. So I see that as like, coming into the body is the Shakti, is the feminine. You're really coming into the lower chakras, into the sense of like being in the body, being in your sexuality, being in the emotions, being safe in this reality, not just up in the consciousness. That's more the masculine, just staying up there, bypassing this reality.
I imagine it has to be crazy at 14 years old. Like that's an age where what can you translate to the people around you? Like, this is what's going on with me. Like, no, like what the hell are you speaking about?
Yeah. And I went to a school where it was run by nuns. It was an all-girls school run by nuns. So they were just like, probably thought I was possessed by the devil or something. So it wasn't much support, but I remember a few friends going through similar things. I would explain some of the things that would happen, and a few of my girlfriends had similar things happen to them. So I think, but not as extreme. It was,
totally. When it happened to me, I was like coming back from training, and it was just like a huge download of information just breaking through my head. And I was like, okay, like what the hell is going on? Like, what are all these understandings? What is reality? What is all this? And it just got me like, I stayed actually like for a year or something, just in my house, just sitting down and meditating, trying to understand, okay, what is reality? Just sitting down, closing the eyes. What is reality? What's going on here? And I really thought like, okay, I'm not functional in the world. After a year or something, it was like, I'm just like, this is very good. This is very cool, but I'm not functional in the world, and I need to survive, and I need to find a job, and I need to live also. And I need to find other solutions other than understanding reality and sitting down and closing the eyes. So it's crazy because sometimes when you start meditating, you can access all these like, you can have these awakenings, all these insights, all these expanded states of consciousness. But if you are not in an environment where you can have people, or some kind of, well, you can say guru, or maybe a sangha, a spiritual family, or a circle that can support you in making sense of what you're experiencing, it can be very, very confusing, and you can get conclusions that are really, really not good for you. That was my experience.
Yeah, it's important to have that support.
Dani,
sí,
¿cómo vas?
Muy bien, bien. Estamos casi con una de las últimas preguntas que queríamos hacerle y bueno, se parten en dos. Para mí es importante que nos explique un poquito cómo ella entiende el placer como fuente de transformación. Y también tengo curiosidad por saber cómo en su trabajo y cómo ella entiende las diferencias entre lo que es el Tantra y lo que es el Neotantra. No, tampoco es para que se expanda, pero sí que también por mi camino en el Tantra y por mi pasión por este viaje, dentro de ese camino espiritual, hay a veces bastante confusión y también bastante polémica entre las personas que se consideran o que siguen un linaje tántrico tradicional y lo que es el neotantra, que realmente no tiene, digamos, esa misma tradición y digamos que a lo mejor coge algunas técnicas para aplicarlas sobre todo al ámbito sexual. Pero a veces creo que se crean conflictos que no son necesarios y quería saber su opinión en esta cuestión, aparte de cómo ella entiende el placer como fuente de transformación.
Estupendo. Junto a lo del placer voy a preguntar también acerca de la sexualidad también, bueno, que viene de la mano, pero que estaba comentando antes de su proceso sanando sus heridas sexuales, que nos desarrolle también en torno a eso un poquito.
Pues entonces, si quieres, pregunta esa parte del placer unido a esto que comentas tú y luego su opinión sobre por qué hay tanto conflicto entre el Tantra y el Neotantra y cómo ella lo armoniza en su vida.
Okay, so we have a few more questions here that are coming up to our minds.
Y dila que ya con esto terminamos.
a few questions that are coming to our minds before closing this beautiful conversation, and it's, well, first, what what do you feel? How do you feel it manifests like sexual trauma? What is sexual trauma, and how it shows up in men and women? And also, you work a lot with pleasure, right? And how can pleasure, what potential it has to heal?
Mm, yeah. So sexual trauma, yeah. So how it manifests in men and women. Well, usually it comes through the physical body. So for men, if they're experiencing things um, like premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, porn addiction, these things, but like more like the body symptoms, there's usually a sign of like some sexual trauma. Something's going on the psychological level. And then for women, it's like, pain in the vagina, like when they're having sex, just feeling like shut down or like low libido, just overall, just no real connection to their, sexuality. Those are the main things, like feeling like in the physical body. And then even women, having irregular menstrual cycles, that can also be a manifestation of some sort of sexual trauma. And when I speak about trauma, like it's a pretty intense, heavy word, trauma. Like it sounds, even just that word is like intense. But, you can have many different levels of trauma. So, for example, like there's soft trauma, like a woman might have, I don't know, had like just been touched inappropriately by someone, or she might have had the full hardcore trauma, which is like rape.
Mhm.
So any sort of thing, and same for men, it's not like there's just because it's soft trauma, it's not important. Like it's still some sort of trauma, or like violation of physical boundaries or sexual boundaries is a legitimate thing. So usually like it just shows up in the body and in the sexual like act like itself. Like if there's some sort of pain or dysfunction, then it's usually indicating like something deeper, some emotional disconnection. And then like so what was the second question about pleasure?
Yeah, using pleasure to heal.
Yeah, so I mean, well, if someone's disconnected, if they're numb, it's like it's hard to just use pleasure to heal because they're numb. So it's really the way that I find is to access more pleasure is if there's a numbness, then it's actually to access the pain, like what is there, because usually it's like there's some deep unresolved pain, emotional pain, that hasn't been accessed, and that's blocking their system from actually accessing pleasure.
Mhm.
So it's like this kind of catch 22, like, it's like, oh, I just want to feel good all the time. It's like, well, are you ready to actually go to the the dark side first? Like, not that it has to be this like really intense thing, but just that's a common thing that blocks pleasure, is like a suppression of pain. And I think it probably manifests more in men, I think, than women, because just from what I see is, and just by how you even shared about like men being disconnected from their emotions, there's a lot of conditioning around like men to not feel, like just as young boys, even like, oh, don't be a pussy or a wimp, or like all these things that maybe their fathers said or the teachers, so they suppress their feelings more, and then that blocks them to feel more pleasure. And the same thing happens with women. It's like, a lot of women are even told just to stop being so dramatic or so emotional. Like I even received that from my family, like stop being so sensitive. It was like I was like a child, like, and so there's like, then that started to shut down some parts of me, and then that blocks pleasure. So we really need to be willing to kind of just be honest with ourselves and feel what's there, and that opens up. It's almost like our body is like a pipe, like there's like a energy system flowing through us that's like a pipe, you can imagine. And then these emotions are like gunk in the side of the pipe that's like clogging it. So that pleasure or that orgasmic energy, life force energy, it's the same thing. It can't flow through. So you have to like flush out the pipes, like, and that means like just feeling whatever that thing is, and then it can just get flushed through, you know? Yeah.
Totally. And it's, as you said, it's a process that, you know, if you want to see the light and you want to experience pleasure, you have to first go to the darkness to clean what's there and face your demons.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, you know, and they talk about that in all mythology, like, you know, the hero's journey. It's like, you know, he goes on his quest and then he has to go into all the caves and face the dragons. It's a metaphor, like we have to face our dragons in order to follow the hero or heroine's journey. It's like there's always going to be a dragon somewhere.
Totally. Is there anything apart from like physical symptoms that you can feel in the body? Would you say there are like that there's some kind of conducts that you could say here so that our audience can relate to, that would define or would be like signals of trauma being there, like you're with a partner, you want to have sex or something, or you want to connect with, and you start seeing like some kind of way of behaving or way of relating that shows there's sexual trauma going on?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, I mean, there was, yeah, like those things, like, you know, ejaculating too quickly, or like for men, that, and then also like not being able to get an erection, like that's a physical symptom. And then maybe just feeling like, I remember one partner I had many years ago, like more than 10 years ago, my second boyfriend, like he couldn't, after we would make love, like he would just like freeze and he couldn't be touched. And it was like there was something there, you know, it was like, because there was this intimacy, and then we kind of actually went through, he went on a journey and went into healing it just with some, like a healer, not with me. And actually it brought up that he was sexually abused when he was a child. We never addressed that until that moment, you know. And so that was a thing, and then it manifests in all different ways, but that's a big thing. And then yeah, for women, you know, just same sort of things, just like pain and the loss of interest in sex, or tightness, like it's like the yoni is like literally shut down, like it's like what is it, like tense, because when a woman's like had some sort of sexual trauma on any level, even just like when she's like a young girl having sex for the first time, maybe, you know, when she's a teenager, she's exploring and she isn't even connected to her body, so she's having sex with men without actually having a full yes in her body. She's just doing it for validation or to get attention or love, and that actually causes this like subtle trauma, because this person she's having sex with isn't actually penetrating her with love and care. It's just like basically just masturbating, mutual masturbation, and there's no care or love or safety. So her body will start to like tense up in her actual vagina. So that tension, like each time she's entered without love, then her body will like seize up and tense. And so it's like it's just like any other muscle in the body, you know, if you have an emotion stuck there, you'll get a sore back or a sore neck. With women, it's the same, like it'll get tense in the vagina if there's any, you know, sexual trauma or sexual experiences that weren't actually loving and really a full body yes, you know, so she'll start to tense up in the vagina. And a lot of my work is actually doing guiding women through, you know, the practices such as the jade egg and self pleasure with like a yoni wand. So internally massaging their own vagina walls, like releasing that tension. So they're doing it themselves. They're not like, you know, getting someone else to do it for them. It's like a self journey. I'm just guiding, you know, the journey and the process. So that's a big thing that a lot of women are holding in their vaginas.
Totally. And that connecting to when we are numb and we are disconnected to our body. We were speaking last week also with Tanya Diamond, and we were speaking about trauma and how she works with trauma, regulating the nervous system through connecting with the body, and how our disconnection with the body also makes us has the consequence of taking us to this numbness where we really need very high stimulation to actually be able to feel, right? And that's trauma driven. So it's very interesting, and there's a huge potential there. Like having a couple where both are trauma informed has a huge healing potential, because instead of falling in a shame spiral and, you know, just one of both feeling shitty and blaming each other and just trying to protect each other from their wounds, both can open up and start that healing process from being together.
Yeah, that's also a good point, like about the whole, just that addiction to pain. Like, you know, that whole, like, there's nothing wrong with BDSM in this world, but a lot of it is stemming from intense trauma, because they're so numb. People are so numb that they need, like, you know, to be whipped 1,000 times to feel anything, or, you know, like intense pain to actually feel something. And that's usually because they're so numb. And I think that's not really, like, I don't know, everyone has their own path in healing that, but I would say, you know, there could be another way that could heal and resensitize in a more gentle way, because it could be like re-traumatizing, you know.
Amazing. So we have a last question here. As Danny asked before in Spanish, I'm translating now, because his main path, main spiritual path is a tantric path, and you also work with tantra. He was asking, like, what would be the difference between, what would you say it's the difference between tantra and neo tantra? What would you say that's going
Más que
on?
las diferencias, Santi, para aclarar, porque las diferencias yo creo que lo sabes, es totalmente, es como que en este camino muchas veces hay esa polémica, por lo menos lo que yo percibo de la gente que sigue un linaje tántrico tradicional, que critica mucho el neotantra porque dice que solo es de trata sobre la sexualidad, y es verdad que es así, ¿no? Pero quiero saber un poco cómo ella lo integra y cuál es su visión, porque para mí, pues, al final, todo lo que sirva para despertar o para crear conciencia sirve como tantra, ¿no? Entonces, pero sí que percibo esa polémica a veces en algunos grupos, y quería saber su visión de esto mismo, más que las diferencias, que creo que las sabe perfectamente, cómo ella lo integra en su vida.
Yeah, maybe more than the differences between Tantra and Neo Tantra, what's your vision regarding to the conflict there's always between both both philosophies? I wouldn't know how to define it. But yeah, how do you integrate both? What's your vision regarding to the conflict that's always present between Tantra and Neo Tantra?
Yeah, I think like a lot of what we see in Tantra and Neo Tantra, you know, I share elements of Neo Tantra in my work, but I think what a lot of people are getting mixed up with is doing this outer Tantra first before doing the inner Tantra. So they're like going to a workshop, not having any connection to their own inner world. And then it's like they're meant to just sit with some random person they've just met and soul gaze with them, and then start to do sexual practices together. And it's almost like how on earth are you meant to connect with someone else in that deep way when you haven't connected to yourself first? So really the root of like traditional tantra is meditation, and most people don't want to do that because it seems boring. So they're like, oh, I just want to have the multi orgasms and I just want to, like, you know, have sex with my partner all night long, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like really it's going to come from when you connect deeper to your inner tantra first. So, you know, what that means is having a deep connection to your inner world and working on that inner polarity of your inner masculine, feminine as a man and woman, you know, finding that balance within first, really getting to know who you truly are, facing your own inner shadows and demons, and becoming intimate with yourself first. And then from that place, find a tantric partner, you know? So that's really what I've come back with my work, is just guiding women specifically, and men when I work with men, just into the inner tantra first. And that will always affect, you know, a lot of people want to become a lot of the taglines in Neo Tantra is like, become an amazing lover. And it's like, and I get that, like it's very appealing, but really what's going to make any person an amazing lover is that deep connection to themselves. When you feel more sensitive within and attuned to yourself, especially as men, you know, when you feel more like energetically present, energetically attuned, and you can attune more to the woman and feel like, yeah, like you can respond as opposed to just like going in with an agenda to perform, you know what I mean? And then same with women, you know, a lot of women have the same conditioning around what it looks like to be a hot lover, being like a porn star or something, you know, and it's like, that's so external, when it's actually the more pleasure you're going to get is like just from cultivating your own pleasure as a woman and learning how to really unlock that within yourself first. And then, you know, you naturally magnetize lovers and partners that are on that same frequency. So yeah, that's like, it's really hard sometimes, and I get, yeah, really, I don't know, disheartened sometimes, because there is so much of the tantra going around like that, where it's just like, yeah, just jump into some sexual act with someone like you just met, and it doesn't really, it actually, I feel that sort of way doesn't really support the feminine. And because the feminine in all of us needs to feel safe in order to open to intimacy. And so how are you meant to feel safe with someone you literally just meet in a workshop, you know? Like, I don't think a man would even feel really safe. Like, you know, like, yeah. It's like, you're not really going to go that deep. It's going to be kind of surface. And then that doesn't really promote real intimacy. It's just like, oh, I had this experience, but it's like just like biting, like it's like just eating, like, you know, the surface of like I don't know, some yummy treat, but you're not actually getting into like the yummy core of it, you know. And that comes with, I feel like, doing your inner work as a man, woman, attracting someone who is also in that same thing, and then going deep together and just really like, you know, going deep together and really going into intimacy. And that might be, you know, a year, it might be 2 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 1 month. It doesn't matter. It's just committing to like creating that container of safety, and like, so you can go deep together, because we all want to feel depth. We don't want to live surface, especially when it comes to like our relationships. You know, I really believe that, like, men and women, we don't want half-assed superficial relationships.
Yeah. I can't agree more with everything you said, like everything. And it's funny because Danny has been long inside Tantra, but I haven't. Like, I discovered and started exploring Tantra. I've been following other paths. I started discovering Tantra not long ago, and it is like the sales pitch can start with become extraordinary lover, but then you get into some kind of course or workshop, and it's just, now do the practice, breathe. breathe every day,
Yeah.
do breathing practice,
Yeah.
and it was, what's going on here? I thought I was going to
Yeah.
become an extraordinary lover.
Yeah.
That's but it's the process, and it's first, as you said, if you want to connect it at deep levels with a woman or with a man, you first have to connect at deep levels with yourself. From there you can make that happen. If not, it's just not possible.
Yeah.
Totally. Muy bien.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Nadine, for being here with us today. We've had a beautiful conversation, and we would like to know if you want to share with us what are you up to right now, where we can find you, where our audience can find you and get more information about you, if they want to work with you, or get a course or go deeper in your work. Where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm in Bali, but a lot of my work now is online because of the situation we're in. So I have online courses. For women, I have a live group mentorship, which is actually starting next week on the 15th of July. It's called Sex Priestess Codes, and that's 6 weeks group mentoring into sacred sexuality, all these practices that I've learned along the way, including inner union, healing your masculine, feminine, jade egg practice, self-pleasure practices, the whole journey. And then I have one-on-one clients also. And I also have like just online courses for women that they can do at their own pace. There's a course for women who are wanting to reconnect to their menstrual cycle, which is called The Creatress. And that's a 4-week just self-paced journey. And then there's another course called Fempire, which is for women who are wanting to start their online coaching business and really integrating the tantric practices of their inner masculine feminine into their business. So doing business like the feminine way, balance with the masculine, but like, the feminine way. And then I have a men's course called Sexual Alchemy for Men, which is an online course. So that's what I'm up to at the moment.
Amazing. And we can find you in your website, tantricalchemy.com, correct? And you also have your Instagram?
Yeah, it's my website is tantricalchemy.net.
.net.
And then my Instagram is tantric.alchemy.
Great. So all the links will be below if you're listening from YouTube, if you're listening from iTunes or Spotify or Google Podcasts. Yes, you can visit our website, or you can visit the YouTube, or you can just type it in. So thank you very much, Nadine, for this conversation. It's been great. We hope that your message can continue reaching more and more people, and it can help heal and grow a lot of men and women. So thank you very much for being with us.
Muchas gracias, Nadine, por esta fantástica conversación, y esperamos tenerte pronto otra vez en Warriors of Love para que podamos seguir inspirando al público de habla hispana.
Thank you. I don't know what you said, but I heard muchas gracias.
Poquito a poco.
I know what that means.